Hey guys, Cliff Gray here again. My plan was to go up in the mountains and do a nice well-lit video for you today, but the Colorado mountain weather's not cooperating, so I'm stuck here in the truck. Regardless, I don't care, because today we're covering a topic that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about why hunters quit during mountain hunts. Specifically mountain hunts that are a challenge and are usually longer duration. So all of your over-the-counter elk hunts in the western states, your sheep hunts in the north, any of those sort of hunts that you're roughing it in wall tents, or you're roughing it out of a backpack, stuff that has a little challenge to it and has a little duration. We're going to talk about why a lot of guys don't make it through those hunts. Okay guys, I know it's a little bit more difficult to keep track of me these days now that I don't have a guiding and outfitting business. So just head to my website, Pursuit with Cliff. You can sign up for my newsletter there. It's a simple website. That's pretty much the only thing on there. Sign up for the newsletter there and keep track of me. Or you can just subscribe to this YouTube channel and you can keep in touch with me that way. So, why do guys quit during these hunts? This is an enigma that has plagued every guide and outfitter probably since the beginning of time. I've talked about it with my guides around the campfire many a time. And the reason that it's such an enigma is we all know what goes into planning these hunts, right? We're talking about hunts that are planned 18 months to 36 months in advance. Individuals are taking a couple weeks off of time, and there's a ton of money involved in terms of planning the hunts. The conclusion that usually comes out of these discussions of why people quit is that some guys and gals are just weak, right? They're just a bitch. I've had guides tell me that several times. The guy just quit because he's a bitch. That's the only explanation I can tell you. Well, guys, I don't think that's a valid explanation, because what I've seen over the years is that some individuals who have a lot of hardship in their history or their just day-to-day life, guys that you think could tough it out through these hunts, they peter out and can't get through. And then the inverse, you have a CEO who's got a secretary, a full staff at his home, doesn't have any hardship whatsoever in his day-to-day life or historically, and he has no problem getting through a mountain hunt, right? So it's not about people's endurance and capability with the hardship. There's something more to it. And the conclusion I've come to is it has mostly to do with how we deal with stress, and there's three aspects of it. One, the anticipation of it. Two, our ability to recognize it during a hunt. And three, how we choose to deal with it during a hunt. If you can deal with stress and the hormones related to it, how it affects you psychologically and physiologically during a hunt, you will master this component of mountain hunting. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in that for you. So a lot of you guys have probably heard that movie line where the guy goes, "Look, in show business, you never go full retard." Well, in the hunting video business, you should probably never go full nerd. But I'm going to go full nerd right now, guys. I've actually got a flow chart of a mountain hunt, okay? All right, here you go. I'll probably stick it up on YouTube for you so you can actually see it. But we'll go through this real quick. This is generally how 99% of mountain hunts go, all right? So first, the hunt starts, there's a ton of excitement and a ton of motivation, and the first 24 to 48 hours of the hunt go really smoothly, right? You're benefiting from that excitement and adrenaline, and people are really enjoying themselves. They've anticipated this for usually years, right? So they're out there, they're on top of things, they have good spirits, and everything's operating smoothly. They're sleeping all right, they're eating all right, they don't have a lot of complaints, and they're usually pretty effectively hunting, all right? So during this period of time, two things can happen. One, you can get lucky, or you can take advantage of a lot of preparation by your guide or outfitter, and you can get successful, okay? And in that case, you end up with closure to the hunt and what I would call an easy success mountain hunt, right? The hunter's take on it is usually that it was a good hunt. The hunter's happy, the guide's happy. If it's a do-it-yourself guy, same thing, he's happy, he feels accomplished. but he hasn't got a ton out of the hunt other than a little exposure during the first 48 hours, okay? So we're not really going to talk about that, path to these mountain hunts. The only thing I'll say is that from years of guiding hunts, myself, I became this way, and then most experienced guides I know, they tried to do a lot of preparation, so a lot of their hunts would end this way. And the reason is they would mitigate the uncertainty related to the other paths that I'm about to describe, all right? So just realize that that path is generally what good experienced guides are shooting for, okay? They want to get you success in the first 2 days, essentially. If they do that, their job's easy, and they keep the variability of your experience down, okay? But let's talk about the next thing that'll happen. You get through 48 hours and stuff hasn't worked out. We enter what I call the grind, okay? And the grind sets in, and generally there's 3 outcomes at this point, all right? 1, the hunter just quits on you. Unfortunately, on these mountain hunts that have some hardship to them, I'd say about 20-30% of guys are going to quit once they enter this phase. They're going to quit during that 3rd or 4th day, and they just can't take it. And so now let's discuss how that ends up playing out to the hunter. So there's no success. Usually a couple weeks afterwards, they have some remorse about the hunt. And then a lot of times what you'll see is they blame the end result of the hunt on outside factors, right? Or there wasn't any game, or it just wasn't going to work out for a myriad of reasons, okay? They do that. And then they don't get a lot out of the hunt. If you quit when that grind starts, you're not getting a ton out of the hunt. You're basically just calling it, and you're not getting the value of the trip because you've chose to quit instead of get through the hunt and garner what you can learn from it. The other thing is, a lot of times you see prolonged denial about the hunt, right? And say, nope, I'm glad I quit because there's no way I was going to kill something. You'll see that a lot, okay? So that's the basically the quit path once you hit the grind. The second path is that the hunter powers through the grind, but they still don't succeed in harvesting an animal. There's nothing wrong with this, okay? And what I find is these are the type of hunts that tend to be the most and the best learning experience for guys. There's usually no remorse. There's still a sense of accomplishment. There's reflection on what could have been done better. And that's the big one for me. When guys power through a hunt, usually they have the ability to look at it with 20/20 hindsight and think, I could have done this better. Me and the guide could have made this choice and it would have been slightly better. All of those things come into play, and they really reflect on that experience. They acknowledge that these hunts are challenging, and they acknowledge that there's uncontrollable variables, okay? And that all factored into the end result of their hunt, okay? But that's still a good result, no worries, okay? The third is that they succeed through the grind, and then they succeed in harvesting an animal. These hunts are a great learning experience, and the hunters end up with the ultimate feeling of accomplishment, right? It wasn't a short, quick hunt where things just got done. They went through that burst of energy in the beginning, and then it kind of had a little slowdown, and then they got success. These usually result in a lot of learning, a lot of added experiential value for them, and then they succeeded in a harvest of an animal. So it's like the ultimate accomplishment. Sometimes these type of hunts will occur after they've done the other type of couple hunts a few times too. So you add all that together, and when it actually comes together, there's an extreme sense of accomplishment for guys. So those are basically the paths of mountain hunts. All right, guys, to just dive in to the anticipation part of this whole stress management thing, I'm going to dive deep into this grind period of a hunt and how stress is affecting you during that period of time, okay? So the first thing to think about is that if you've allowed there to be a lot of stress in the first couple days of your hunt, you've actually been benefiting from those hormones related to stress, okay? I see this in hunters a lot. They're usually super focused, super energetic right when they get there, right? They're those hunters that they're stressed out, but it's manifesting itself in kind of a positive way, okay? Like they're more willing to, take on physical challenges. They're willing to do that pretty intense stalk, all of those things, because those stress hormones, right, are in their body. The one we all know about is adrenaline, and then there's noradrenaline too, kind of does related things. But a real high stress guy, when he starts a hunt, the first couple days, he's going to be exposed to those. And they're going to make him more focused, hyper responsive, and they're going to have more energy and endurance. Those are reactions to those hormones. And it's funny because you'll see it in guys if they're just anticipating the hunt for so long, and they've got a lot of stress about it. It's like a high stakes game to them. You get them to a glassy knob, and they'll get on their binoculars, and they'll be effective at glassing, but they're hypersensitive to things. Ooh, I think I see something there. I think I see something there. And it's not that they don't know what they're looking at. They're just hypersensitive. That's that adrenaline and that noradrenaline just affecting their system. So, but like I said, it actually benefits them as a hunter for the first couple days. But the thing that happens is they get into this 36, 48 hour period into the hunt, and it varies a little bit depending on, what kind of travel logistics and stuff you had involved here. But what happens is that adrenaline and noradrenaline, it drops off, and you get kind of a dump, right? You get a hormonal dump. And the telltale sign of this is that you'll be super exhausted. Or if you're a guide and you're watching a hunter, that hunter will be super exhausted, but he can't rest, right? So in the middle of the day, when all the wildlife is down bedded, and your guide just out snoring under a cedar tree or whatever, and you're so tired but you can't sleep, what you're feeling is that hormonal dump off of all that stress you had in the first couple days, okay? And then the third hormone that's affecting you is cortisol. So cortisol has been basically slowly leaking into your system during the first couple days of your hunt, and then during the logistics and travel also. And what that cortisol is doing as a stress hormone is it's telling your body to shut down the systems that you don't need and focus on the systems that you do need in a stressful scenario, all right? So that's what's giving you that ability to be hyper-focused, a little more endurance, all of those things, but at the same time, it's been shutting down all the other systems. And important systems on a long-duration mountain hunt to not be shut down are like your digestion and your immune system, right? So those two you're gonna start to notice it like 36, 48 hours in. If you've been a high-stress individual during this period of time, you're going to start developing problems with those systems. And then the other thing you're going to notice is you have really volatile blood sugar, right? Cortisol is known for this. If you read any literature on kind of acute stress situations, almost always people have big varying volatile blood sugar after that, and it can be problematic. Usually how that blood sugar volatility manifests itself to you, just so you guys can recognize it, is you're going to get an intense down. I mean, people describe it as almost like a depression, right? I've felt this, 48 hours, or so into a hunt before, and it's an intense down. And it's really just, I would describe it as just exhaustion, but a lot of people, describe it as like depression almost. And that's your blood sugar getting way out of whack. Okay. And so this can be, it can affect hunters, physically and mentally quite a bit. So just realize that, anticipate that. When you feel that, that's a hormonal thing related to this massive influx and stress over the first couple days of your hunt. All right, so at the end, we'll talk about how to mitigate these scenarios. But first, let's talk about, we've anticipated it. Now we're in a hunt. Now we need to recognize it, recognize what's going on, okay? So let's just talk about the two different type of hunter. You got a high stress hunter at that kind of penultimate period right when you hit the grind of the hunt, okay? A high stress hunter who's having a hard time, guides can tell, and an individual can tell themselves, because there's some kind of unique symptoms, okay? One, you get kind of disassociative, I would call it. You kind of get where you don't have much real emotion. And then from a guide hunter perspective, a lot of times the hunter, they won't have any opinion about anything, right? So you throw out a couple different scenarios, a couple different strategies about how we're going to spend the day, and their response is kind of like, oh, whatever you think. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. It's kind of like this disassociative feeling from them, and it usually is kind of a click, and that's when they're feeling some of these components. The other thing is you can sense a little anger or irritability, and a lot of times this is directed towards the situation, like, there's no game around, they must have moved out of the area, there's no chance. And then the one telltale sign I know that I notice from guys that have, they're just getting off all these stress hormones during their hunt, is they say things like, even if we do find one, how are we going to kill it? And they're usually relating to the terrain and the difficulty of the terrain. Just kind of a negative attitude develops between them. And the other thing is they manifest weird priorities outside of the hunt, okay? They'll start to manifest like, oh, I need to get home because my wife needs this or my business needs that. And that's... I'll get into this more in the next part, but you have to realize as a hunter, that's all bullshit, okay? This is your priority. You've spent the money, the time, the effort. Everybody around you will understand that it's important to you. You don't need to be manifesting other priorities. The hunt is your priority. And then the sign that you got to be really careful of, and this is usually a telltale sign you got a good chance of not making it through the grind component of a hunt, is you start to rationalize quitting, right? Like, oh, well, I need maybe I'll just quit a couple days early. I need the time. I can catch up on this work project. And a lot of guys will do this. They'll say, oh, like maybe I can quit for a few days and come back, if that's logistically possible for them. Like, I'll finish out the last couple days of the season on my own. Those are real standard kind of, hunter excuses. They start to manifest why it makes sense for them to quit. You'll notice that guys will kind of get flighty, right? I've seen this in groups of hunters. I mean, one sticks in my mind. I remember a hunter that had us pack him out of a drop camp, and he never told his buddies, right? And then years later, I talked to those guys, and they're like, yeah, it was just like it was like the weirdest, unlike him behavior, right? And that's just a hunter that's coming off massive influx of stress, okay? And now he's feeling the other side of that. And the last thing that I'll mention is you'll get what I call is just engine failure. And it's just related to all the same things we're talking about, but mainly that cortisol issue, and that's that your body has shut down some essential systems, so your immune system and digestive system. So you get kind of engine failure into that, second or third day, where guys, they haven't shit for 2 days, right? So they're starting to feel pretty miserable. Their stomach feels miserable. They start to feel sick, right? So you get that component of it. And those are major issues. The other thing is they'll just pick up little colds. Like I have this little cold now, like a lingering cold. A lot of us have that during the fall, but you go through a stressful period and wham, like it hits you hard. And if you're on a hunt when that happens, I call that engine failure. And that to me is, again, it's a symptom of these guys that come into these hunts and have really elevated stress levels during the logistics in the first couple days. And engine failure will hit like that second or third day. And that's a pretty big issue, as you can imagine. All right, so let's talk about real quick just what a low stress hunter looks like in an analogous way. They go into that third day, into that, the grind component of the hunt, and they stay engaged, right? They're not having a problem with their energy levels and that sort of thing. They stay engaged, and they're always looking to improve the situation, okay? The second thing is they focus on the fact that all it takes is a brief moment to turn around the hunt. So it's the inverse of what your first type of hunter looks like, right? He's looking at the negativity and everything, and he's taking the probability of success and he's making it really, really low. The other hunter, the low stress hunter who's not dealing with this massive influx of hormones and stuff, what he's thinking is like, all it takes is a moment to turn this hunt around, okay? And so that's like a telltale sign of a hunter that's not having problems with stress. The other thing is they're just able to sleep, right? So when they get an opportunity to sleep, they conk out. That's pretty obvious one. The other thing is that all their physiological systems are operating, right? They're eating well, they're keeping their calories up, using their restroom, not having a problem with any of that stuff. And then, to me, a telltale sign, if I get into the third day with a hunter that I'm guiding, and I put this in the context of hunters I'm guiding because that's just my experience, guys. You can take all of this and put it as if you're hunting with a friend or whatever. I just say as a guided hunter, not that it only applies to that situation, but it's what I've been exposed to and what my employees and stuff have been exposed to. But anyways, outside of that caveat, what I was gonna say is a telltale sign of a guy that's not gonna have any problem when he hits that grind is a guy with a sense of humor, okay? That tells me that the guy has not had intense stress or anything like that to deal with, and he's gonna power through, okay? Alright guys, so I've fully nerded out on this stuff, so hopefully you have a good feel for what to anticipate and how to recognize these stress related issues on these mountain hunts, okay? So now I'm going to talk about how to make sure you end up on that path of getting through the grind and either having an unsuccessful hunt that's super useful to you, or getting through the grind and having a successful hunt, right? Those are the paths you want to be on in the context of what we're talking about. So I'm gonna give you the prescriptions for that. So first, how do we limit having all that stress early on in the hunt, okay? I'm gonna call this preparation in terms of mitigation. So one is just experience, and I hate to put that out there because that's not, there's no magic bullet for guys that don't have experience, other than what I can say is if you want to increase your chances of getting through these challenging hunts, you need to keep on trying. The analogy that I'll use is that when I was in my early 20s, I got into diving. I used to dive for abalone on the northern coast of California, and the first, I had like the first probably 15 times I went, I just pussed out. And it was the same kind of deal. I'd get this intense stress and it would screw with me, and I couldn't learn, and I would quit. I could only dive for a day, and next day I'd take off. I had real problems with it. But you just have to keep powering through it and get that experience, and then you won't get these big dumps of stress early on these trips. So that's number one for mitigating it. 2, limit your travel issues, right? Don't drive for 24 hours before you get on a horse and go 8 miles into the wilderness to start your 10-day hunt, okay? That's a prescription for a massive influx in stress, okay? And I can tell you statistically, on the groups I packed in over the years, that is a big factor on early packouts and guys quitting early, okay? So related to that, if you can put a little time in there to acclimate to the area, the climate, the environment, the temperatures, all of that for a day or two, that'll help you out too, and that'll reduce that early stress level. The other thing is physical exhaustion. Okay, if you do have that, like stress is already hitting you, adrenaline's already hitting you, and you have that urge to go out there and push your limits, try not to do it in the first 48 hours, okay? That'll keep that stress level mitigated a little bit if you can kind of keep the physical component under control and not go get exhausted. The other thing is, in the weeks and months, getting close to the hunt, try to temper your expectations. Don't make the hunt about the harvest or the collection of the animal. And I know, because I've guided all varying degrees of hunts, that that's a lot easier said than done. I've dealt with it myself, if I'm being honest, and I've dealt with it with a lot of hunters. right? Not every hunt is it going to be a natural feeling for you to make it all about the experience. But you really need to try to focus on that. And if you do that, your stress level early on in the hunt is going to go way down. It's not going to be about like, this is make it or break it, I got to harvest animal, that sort of thing. That creates massive influxes in stress. And that's, again, what causes people that are more likely to get through that grind, or excuse me, less likely to get through that grind period. Ironically, being intensely stressed about the harvest of the animal makes you more susceptible to quitting as the hunt goes on, okay? So temper those expectations and frame the hunt in a way that it's about the experience, but it's also about the journey of becoming a better hunter. If you do that also, it's gonna lower the stress level and again get you through these hunts, because it's gonna, in addition to just the physiological components of stress that we've talked about, if you view things in terms of the value of learning during the hunt, you're also more motivated to get through the hunt just because it's more exposure to things, right? It's not about, oh, I just don't think there's a chance of us killing something. That you don't get into that mindset. You're more likely to be like, I'm here to value each day for what I can learn each day, okay? So that's another good one. The other two things, more on the physical front, is do your best to sleep normally and keep your diet in check. I'm going to do some videos specifically on these, like some preparation tactics for hunts that specifically focus on sleep and diet, but those are key to keeping that stress level down early on in the hunt and then throughout the hunt. Okay, so now I'm sure you guys are saying like, holy shit, I'm gonna end up as one of these like high stress hunters because I'm just learning. So I'm gonna get into one of these hunts, I'm gonna feel these symptoms of stress he's talking about, and it's gonna make it even worse because I'm not gonna know what to do. So here's some prescriptions for you when this happens during a hunt, okay? First, the same big two physical things, right? You got to deal with your diet. You've got to stimulate your digestive system. The short and sweet of that is that you have to keep eating regularly. Do not let the fact that your digestive system feels weird get you into an extreme calorie deficit, okay? That'll only make things worse. It'll make those lows worse. So you need to get a hold of that, okay? I'll show you some ways in other videos, but in a general sense, do not stop eating. Make sure you keep your calories up. And then sleep, right? On sleep, it's kind of the same thing. You just got to try to rest when you can, all right? Try to clear your mind of things and try to get back into that normal restfulness space where you're not dealing with that. It's very hard if you already have this spike in hormones like I already mentioned, but you can deal with it. You just have to be conscientious about it. The second thing I'm going to recommend, I've already prepared you for, and that's recognizing it. Recognizing it is 90% of the battle, because if you can recognize what's making you feel this way during a hunt, what's making you feel the intense urge to quit, or the intense urge to be negative, or the intense urge to just be a dickhead when you otherwise wouldn't be, right? If you recognize that and know what it is, the thing that'll help you through is that you know it's short term, okay? These stress related things I'm talking about, these hormone related things I'm talking about, they're short term when you're up on the mountain. So if you can power through them, you'll get back to the norm, okay? So that's my biggest one on dealing with it if it's happening to you. Try to consciously realize that it's short term, and that's a huge one. I've used that a ton for myself as a guide, right? If I have a couple days that are high stress for, it may not have anything to do with, the part of the hunt that the hunter sees. It might have to do with how I'm operating my business, uncontrollable things I'm having to deal with, just big stress deals as an outfitter or guide. If I've had that, I'll get a lot of these things we're talking about during a hunt. If I realize it's short term, I can power through, and the next day I'll be ready to rock. So keep that in mind. That's another huge one. The third one, I've already mentioned it, but you have to consciously remember that the hunt is priority number one, okay? You've been planning for this, you've spent the money, and do not bullshit yourself. If they've let you get to the hunt everybody outside of the hunt, the world outside of this hunt, they'll understand why you're there, okay? That their ability and chance to make you feel bad and shitty about going on this hunt and spending the money, that's over with, right? You're at the hunt. So priority number one is the hunt. So remember that. It's kind of the same mentality as short-term thing. If you remember that the hunt is priority one, you'll get through till the end. The last thing is you need to focus on the moment, okay? And what I mean by that is you need to focus on the fact that it is a statistical fact. It doesn't matter how rough the hunt's going, okay? It only takes the moment to turn around the hunt, okay? To turn around the hunt, in one sense, is that all it takes is to be walking down a trail and a bull elk walks right out in the trail. It just gives you that moment, and the hunt's a success, and it's completely turned around, right? All the hardship you'll tend to forget in that type of hunt, and that one moment turned it around, okay? So you got to remember that it only takes a moment when these hunts are getting tough on you, okay? All right? And the other thing is it only takes a moment, even in an unsuccessful hunt, to make the whole thing worth it. You might have one moment where you learn something about the species you're hunting, about the terrain you're hunting, about strategy, any of those components. It only takes one moment for you to learn something that is branded into your brain and you use for the complete future of your hunts, okay? So keep that in mind. That'll get you to power through too. So anyways, guys, I know this was like 10x level nerddom in terms of a hunting video, but I really hope that if you think about these things, it'll give you more longevity in your hunts and get you guys through all the components of these mountain hunts, get you through that grind, get you more success. But in the end, the main thing is end up with you becoming a better hunter. So guys, I hope you found that helpful. Thanks for joining me. See ya.